Well, last week it was a vaccine rollout war between the federal government and various states. Emergency Management Minister David Littleproud demanded that the states pull their fingers out, stop storing vaccine doses and get moving with the rollout. And of course, the states hit the roof.
I'm as angry as I have ever been in this 15 months of war against this virus. All governments in Australia should be working together. One day we're the gold standard, the next day we're being told we're not. Well, we are still the gold standard because we have amazing frontline health staff. And if we're given the clear evidence and indications of what we're going to get, we'll work to that. And we are at the front line of a war, New South Wales and the other public health teams, and we have been doing a very good job with our public health officials working hard. I really find this very offensive.
And of course, other health ministers joined that chorus and were scathing of how the feds were failing at both distribution and communication about what doses were on the way. But today, the war shifted. It shifted to lockdowns again, and it was Queensland Premier Annastacia Palaszczuk who Federal Defence Minister Peter Dutton targeted this morning on Sky News.
I had hoped that the closure of borders was behind us because as we've seen the contact tracing process mature and again to be world leading, we should be able to deal with an outbreak of 1 or 2 or 3 cases. So I think there has been from the start, and probably even in this latest example, been a bit of panic by Premier Palaszczuk. It's incredibly disruptive and it makes it very difficult for people to be able to plan. We want jobs growing. We don't want them diminishing. We want to make sure that people's businesses are viable, particularly over the coming months, and the closure of borders in a knee-jerk way just doesn't help that.
Now, Dutton has not missed an opportunity during this pandemic to slam the Queensland Labor government for its frequent lockdowns, based, of course, on minimal infection numbers. And the tourism sector, of course, has been demanding some kind of universal agreement on when borders will shut and when lockdowns will be enacted. But the Prime Minister is either unable or unwilling to get states and territories across the line on this. Today, a leading tourism executive pointed to Queensland's pre-Easter 3-day lockdown as one of the most damaging. Margie Osmond, the CEO of the Tourism and Transport Forum, told me on radio today that it sent the worst possible message to Australians who are contemplating business and recreational travel.
The last week has probably done more damage to recovery than is at first blush obvious, because it will have destroyed confidence yet again. So, in the first 24 hours of the lockdown last week, there was millions and millions of dollars of cancellations, particularly in Queensland. But it's not just about Queensland. It just destroys overall confidence in terms of people's willingness to travel.
3 days may not have sounded much to Annastacia Palaszczuk, but it was an eternity to those who had prepared for Easter. There was simply no need to shut down an entire region of southeast Queensland, including the city of Brisbane, on the basis of 6 infections from 2 small clusters. Dutton is right. It had all the usual hallmarks of panic, and the numbers since have supported what he said today. It's hurt tourism operators, accommodation providers and hospitality venues to the tune of millions and millions of dollars again. But there was the Premier last week when announcing the end of her latest lockdown, making the claim that it was somehow an effective lockdown.
Can I really thank Queenslanders? This has been phenomenal. It has been very stressful for everyone, and I just want to thank everyone who's been involved. Most importantly, you at home. People of this state have really stepped up, and people in Greater Brisbane have honestly listened to everything that we have asked of them, and I cannot be more proud than today to see the great efforts of everybody. Secondly, can I say to the businesses out there, I know that has been tough as well. These are tough decisions. These are not easy decisions. And don't think for one moment that I don't think of all of those consequences when we are doing this. But the consequences of not acting are far worse.
Not acting. So somehow the lockdown created a situation where there weren't many infections afterwards. There is no link between the small numbers of infections in those clusters and the fact that Palaszczuk locked down that region of Queensland. It's Queensland, a state still recording temperatures in the 30s, and where people spend time outdoors, in open spaces, away from each other. The same applies to Byron Bay, where it crossed into New South Wales. The cluster was never going to explode. Those numbers, too, since validate that argument. And so much for the scare campaign over the UK variant. So far, well, it's been like the English cricket team, a dud when they're on tour down under. The aim surely should be that by at least July, if not earlier, after all vulnerable and elderly Australians are vaccinated and international borders are still closed, all states and territories should be forced to sign a joint memorandum of agreement to not close any of our internal borders, nor lock down their states. It's the very least Australians deserve now. And now that the security blanket, JobKeeper, is gone, any deviation from that will only kill the economy, kill jobs and more livelihoods. Enough of the panic.